Oh, I didn't print that page for you. No, sorry. You can just, sorry, yes. Just write it on the back of the page maybe, or just next to where you've stuck it in if you have already done that. Sorry, I actually just printed the scatter plot so that you could do that on the page. Alright guys, so again, let me just quickly remind you here that they've told us that the price of milk is X and the number of liters, or number of containers rather, sold was Y. And guys, you can see here, this obviously won't be the case for your June exams because this is not an English/Afrikaans school, but in finals they do put both languages in the answer booklet, right? So it's English and Afrikaans. So here you've done your scatter plot, whatever you got full marks for it, hopefully, I'm sure. Then for 2.2, they're asking for the equation of the least squares regression line. Now guys, you need to know that the standard form for that is y with a little copy on equal to a plus bx. It's a line, right? So we know that when we are doing geometry, we always work with y equals mx plus c. Right? This is similar, guys. We are also starting with a y. Do we see that we have a number in front of x, right? And then we have a constant term. Just for the purpose of stats, they write it slightly differently. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to use your calculator to find the values of a and b. So you need to put your calculator in stat mode. So you're going to press mode. And then depending on which type of calculator you have, you're going to choose the stat option. So for mine, it's 3. And guys, there we see option 2 is a plus bx. So that's where we're going. It will give you an x and a y column. You now need to type in all of your x values and then all of your y values. So I'm just quickly doing that.
Is that the standard frame for regression?
This one, yes. The blue one. So guys, what's faster for me is to actually fill in all my x values first and then go back and then put in my y values. So you type the number and then you press equals after that. And then that saves the number in the calculator. Okay, so I'm going to write the steps down here. You press mode. And then for me, it's option 3. And then you're going to choose option 2. Right, once you have typed in all of your values, you are going to press AC. Right, which is that orange button there. You're going to press AC, and then the screen is going to look like that. We can still see that it says stat at the top. Okay, that's important. It has to still be in stat mode. Then what you're going to press is shift, and if you look above the 1 button, it says stat. Right, you're going to press stat then. And now, what line are we finding? The regression line. So reg, so number 5. Alright, so you're going to press AC. Let me just quickly write here everything that we've done so far. Then shift. And then 1, which is stat. And then 5, which is reg, which is short for regression. And once you've done that, guys, you will see A, B, and also R. So if they've asked for the correlation coefficient, that's R. All right, you would follow the exact same steps to get to that. Oh, no, that's not a good sign. All right, so A is 90, let's say 48. And now, guys, you need to follow those same steps to get to B. You're not going to type in all your X and Y values again, but you are again going to do shift and 1 and then 5 for regression, and then you're going to press 2 for B, press equals, and that will give you your B value. Negative 1,77. Now, obviously, in your exam, you're not going to write all of these things down, right? These were the steps. So you would just write down your A and your B value. You will get a mark for each of those. And then the third mark, guys, is for actually writing your equation down. So you're going to say, therefore, y is equal to... And if you forget this standard form, guys, it's on the calculator, right? That's the option that we chose here before we started typing our values in. A plus bx. So this is going to be the form that our answer has to be in. So our A value was 90,48 plus, actually not plus in this case. It should be plus bx, but our B value is now negative. Right, so we're going to say minus 1,77x. That is then your third mark. So guys, what I suggest, if you forget the form of this line, right? If you forget how it should be A plus bx, you need to at least write down A and B. That will already give you 2 marks. Okay, that's how we always mark. A mark for A, a mark for B, and then a mark for the final line. So this, I'm just going to highlight all of this stuff. This was like a note, basically. That's not a part of your answer. Those are the steps that you need to follow. Okay, are we fine with that one? Guys, these count as knowledge marks, meaning they are counting on everyone to get these 3 marks. Okay, you have to memorize these calculator steps. If you don't, you are throwing away marks. They always ask these types of questions. And it's also always the first questions in the paper. So it's meant to like start you off on an easier way so that you feel a bit more confident after the first few questions. So please, you're going to have to make time to memorize these steps. Okay, very important. We can talk about the correlation coefficient just now. For 2.3, they said if the farmer sells a 5-liter container of milk for 38 Rand. So now, guys, the price of milk, if we're looking at the question, they're giving us a price now, right? They're saying he's selling it for 38 Rand. Do we understand that they're giving us an X value there? Right? The X values, those were the price of milk values. So basically they are telling us in the next question, they're saying that X is now 38. That's what's given. Right? They're giving us a price for a container. Predict the number of 5-liter containers of milk he will sell. So they're asking us to find Y. They're saying if the price is 38 Rand, that was X. How many containers will he sell? And the number of containers, that was Y. Right? Now guys, you have 2 things that you can do here. Method 1 would be to take your equation that you got in the previous question and sub in. So sub in X equals 38 into regression line equation. Just going to highlight that again because that again is a note. So you would take this equation up here, you would say Y is going to be 90,48 minus 1,77 times X, the price per container that they gave us, which was 38. And then, guys, you're not going to go out of stat mode. Just keep it there. You're going to just type that in, okay? 90.48 minus 1.77 bracket 38. And your answer is going to be 23.22. Now, what does this represent, guys? Number of containers. So how many containers is that? 23. All right. So So therefore, 23 containers. Okay, so that method is very easy if you were able to write your equation down at the top. So I'm going to just show you the second method, which is also faster, which is just by using the calculator. So remember, we're still in stat mode. We've already typed in our x and y values. We haven't cleared anything. We've calculated a and b. We got our equation, but now we want to use the calculator for this prediction. So I'm going to write down the steps. Again, you're going to press shift. Actually, sorry. First, type in the number that they've given you, 38. And then equals. Then you're going to press shift. And 1 for stat again. Guys, every time after we've put out our values in when we want to do a calculation, it's always shift 1. Okay, in order to get to the calculations. I'm going to have to go on underneath here. Alright, so 38 equals, you press shift, stat. Again, you're going to use 5 for regression. And then when you get there, you should see an option of y with that little cuppy on. Right, so we've just filled in an x value. If we press the button for y, now it's going to give us the y value that goes along with that x value. All right, so we're going to press option 5, which is y, and then equals. So you'll see that it says there, answer y equals, and there we get our answer, 23,07. Now guys, the reason why this value, this unrounded value, is a little bit different is because when we used our equation in method 1, we rounded that value off and that value. Right, so this answer here, 23,22, is not actually the exact answer. This is actually the exact answer, 23,07. The calculator uses the unrounded values for A and B. All right, where when we're subbing it into the calculator, remember we rounded this 90,48 off. It still had more decimals and the negative 1,77. But it's fine. You will get the marks either way. Yes. Both will be accepted. Guys, if you're using your calculator, you're not going to show any working. You're just going to write the answer down. But I do urge you, please, to write down 23,07 and then say, therefore, 23 containers. How many marks is this? 2 marks. So it will be 1 mark for the unrounded and then a mark for the rounded. And if you are using method 1, you will get a mark for subbing in and then a mark for your answer. Okay, are we fine with that one? 2.4, here we're getting to the correlation coefficient, Mr. Johnson. Refer to the correlation between the price of 5-liter containers and the number of milk sold, the number of containers sold, and comment on the accuracy of your answer to question 2.3. Now guys, the correlation coefficient is R, and that tells you how strong the relationship is between the price and the number of containers sold. Now guys, I think it should make sense just logically that the number of items that you sell does or is impacted by the price of that, right? Because if something is very, very expensive, people will maybe try and find a cheaper alternative. But if the price is quite low, then people will probably buy more of those containers, right? Does that make sense? But we can't just speak out of logic, unfortunately, with data handling questions. We have to have calculations to back up our argument. So the correlation coefficient is what we are going to do for that. So I'm just going to say here, measures how strong the correlation, or you can say relationship if you want, how strong the correlation between cost of container and number of containers sold is. Now guys, the thing with the correlation coefficient, I don't know if you remember, is it is always between -1 and 1. So the closer that number is to 1, the higher the correlation. And if it's a positive correlation, meaning as the one value increases, the other value will also increase. But the closer that value is to -1, it's also the stronger it is, but then it's negative. So then it means, for example, in this case, the higher the price, the less containers you're going to sell. Right? That's what it means if you have a negative correlation. But we're going to use the calculator for that. So we're going to say, again, we've already put our x and y values out, or into the calculator, right? So we're still in stat mode. You're going to press shift. One for stat. Again, 5 for reg. So guys, for all of these questions, we've used the same calculator steps, right? And now you are going to look at option 3, which is the correlation coefficient. You're going to press equal, and that will give you the answer. So in this case, our R value is -0.94. Now guys, that is a negative correlation, right? Meaning that as the one value increases, the other one is going to decrease. So like I said already, the higher the price per container, the less containers we're going to sell, which is what we kind of expect, right? That's logically, that makes sense. But what they were asking here, again, I'm going to just read through the question. They said, and comment on the accuracy of your answer to question 2.3. Now guys, what we did in 2.3 is we made a prediction, right? We say that if the cost per container is 38 Rand, then we predict that they're going to sell about 23 containers, all right? That is a prediction. We've used the information, the X and the Y values, to predict that. Now they're asking us, is this actually an accurate prediction? Can we expect that it will be close to 23? Now guys, what happens is that if your correlation coefficient is very strong, right? If the relationship between X and Y is very strong, then your prediction is going to be very accurate. Okay, so this -0.94 is close to -1. So that means it's a very strong correlation. Very strong correlation. And if the correlation is very strong, then that means that the what's it called? The prediction is very accurate. And that would be your answer. All right, so you would get a mark for saying that your correlation coefficient is this. And then you would get your second mark for saying, because the correlation is very strong, that means that the prediction is very accurate. Guys, if your correlation coefficient was like a 0,1 or 0,3 or maybe even a 0,5, right? If it was not very close to 1 or -1, that means that you don't have a very strong correlation, so your prediction is not going to be very accurate. Okay, this is a question that has been coming up more frequently in the past few years. In the past, they always just used to ask you to calculate R and then say, comment on the correlation. So then you would say, it's a very strong negative linear correlation, right? And that was it. Now they're actually getting more into like the interpretation of it. What does it mean if the correlation is very strong? That means that the prediction is very accurate. Okay. So guys, this was 10 marks, meaning all of this should have taken you 10 minutes. Okay? And you should be getting all of these 10 marks. It's calculator work, it's steps that you are memorizing, and you need to be able to know that is how you find your regression line, that's how you write it out, that is how you do the prediction, and then that's how you find your correlation coefficient. Guys, even if you weren't sure of this last comment here, you could still get 9 out of 10 for this question. Alright, the actual final thing where they're saying, is it an accurate prediction? If you're not sure about that, you can still get 9 out of 10 marks for only calculations. I'll be with you now. In this whole question, the only interpretation part was this very last mark, where you have to say it's very accurate. Everything else is memorizing calculator steps and doing calculations. Kieran? Sorry. Yes?
Well, when it's close to -101, say now it's like 0.55. Would that be like?
So I would say that's like a moderate correlation. So the prediction will not be very accurate.
So it has to be strong.
Yes, yeah. Strong or very strong. So I would say, and usually for these questions, they don't want there to be like a gray area. So they'll make it like a 0,9 something if it's meant to be very strong. Or if it's not strong, then it will be like a 0,3. So then you can say it's a weak correlation. So the prediction will not be accurate. Okay. They don't usually give values that are kind of like in between, where you have to, where it's not sure. Jade, was that your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, guys, fine with that. Let's quickly look at question 5. I know you have started looking at it. This is also important because, like I said, this year we didn't really go through these types of questions where you are given a trig kind of expression and you just need to simplify it. Now guys, this is a 6-mark question. They always ask a question like this in finals. And I know obviously you're not going to be writing finals now, but you do need to be able to do these questions for these exams as well. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is, or hopefully that we can notice, is that we're going to have 2 reduction formula here, right? 360 minus x. Which quadrant is 360 minus? 4. Do that in blue, that's quadrant 4. And what about negative x? That's also quadrant 4. Hey, x will be quadrant 1, negative x will also be quadrant 4. So we have 2 fourth quadrant angles here. So we're going to just apply the signs in the fourth quadrant to those. But now these two, guys, 140, what we're going to have to do with that is we're going to have to rewrite that as 180 minus 40. Right? In order to change an obtuse angle, which is what 140 degrees is, right? It's bigger than 90. We need to write it in terms of one of those quadrants. So 180 minus, that's going to be quadrant 2. So we can then just apply the sign of sine in quadrant 2 and drop that 180 minus. Okay, that's what we're going to do there. Now, what about 360 minus x? What is sine in the fourth quadrant? Negative. So guys, please, because we now have multiple things happening here, put that minus sine x in brackets. I've seen it so many times when I'm marking finals that people write negative sine x, they get that mark, but then they like forget about it because it's not written in brackets. Okay, so please do put it in brackets. Cos 50, now guys, 50 degrees is actually an acute angle, right? So I'm just going to leave it for now. Is 50 a special angle? Do I have a triangle for that? No. Okay, so something else is going to have to happen there. Let's just leave that one like that for now. Now, what about tan in the fourth quadrant? Also negative. Negative tan x. Guys, if this is the only thing that you can do, you already have 2 marks for that line. Right? The mark allocation for these questions is really nice. For every reduction that you do, you get a mark. Okay, so at the very least, do those 2 reductions. There you already have 2 out of 6. Okay, we can do the next reduction also very easily because what is sine in the second quadrant? Positive. So this is just going to become sine 40. There you get your 3rd mark. Now guys, while we're looking at this, do we agree that we can cancel out these 2 minuses? This is all one term. Hey, sorry, let me actually draw in my line there. So we can actually cancel out that negative and that negative. But guys, you have to show the negative first before you cancel it out. Okay, they have to see that you know that sine in the fourth quadrant is negative sine x. Okay, so that minus has to be there at first. So I'm going to write that now as sine x. And now, if we're looking at the bottom here, cos 50, and at the top we also have a sine 40. Neither of those 2 angles are special angles, right? So I can't get rid of those by using my special triangles. But guys, is there some kind of relationship between 40 and 50? If I add them together, I will get 90, right? So 40 degrees and 50 degrees are what we call co-ratios. Complementary ratios, because when I add them together, I will get 90 degrees. And do we remember from like grade 8 or something, if 2 angles add up to 90, they are complementary angles, right? That's where co-ratios come from, complementary ratios. They add up to 90 degrees. So guys, what that means is I can actually change cos 50 to sine of 40. Okay, so you can change this cos at the bottom to a sine. And then what is the co-ratio of 50 degrees? What must you add to 50 to get 90? 40. So these 2 are equal to each other. Cos 50 is equal to sine 40. That will be your 4th mark for recognizing that those 2 are co-ratios and that you can change them. And guys, how does that help me? That means I can cancel them out. Okay, before we get to that, what about tan x? Sine over cos. Sine x over cos x. There you have your 5th mark. Equals. Okay, let's quickly show that we are cancelling out those sine 40s. Now guys, you can see in a test or exam how important it is that the marker can read what was written there, right? If you're just like scratching out and making a big mess and they can't see sine 40 and sine 40, you might not get those 2 marks. Okay, so just do it you can do it like with a pencil, quite faint. So now we're left with sine x divided by sine x over cos x. So I'm just going to write it like this quickly. Sine x divided by sine x over cos x. Now guys, what do we do when we are dividing by a fraction? What did you learn in like grade 8? You have to tip and times. So I'm going to change that to sine x times cos x over sine x. Now, the sine x that's on its own is going to cancel out the sine x at the bottom there. Because this sine x is the same as sine x over 1, right? So you can cross cancel there. So what am I left with? Cos x. And that will be your final answer. Or final mark, I mean. Okay, so guys, these types of questions, I think it can look quite intimidating because you would look at it and think, oh, there's a lot that must happen there, and it's 6 marks, so it has to be difficult. It's not actually difficult to get the marks here. I think the difficult part was really this last kind of manipulation here, right? And that is only actually worth 1 of the 6 marks. So just to go through that again, you get a mark for fourth quadrant, right? So those 2 marks are actually both for working in the fourth quadrant. You get a mark for changing tan to sine over cos, which we all know we can do. All right, we get a mark for this. Now this reduction was a little bit more complicated because we had to know that 140 we must write as 180 minus 40. All right, so to get to that was a little bit more work. Then we did our co-ratio also, 1 mark, and then 1 mark for the final answer. So guys, you can get at least 3 out of 6 here very easily, right? For that fourth quadrant, and for changing tan to sine over cos. All right, so in these questions, do what you can. All right, you do get marks for all of the reductions that you do. Okay, next one, prove the identity, 5.2. I actually want you guys to try and do that one on your own for homework. I want to quickly go on to 5.3. So 5.2 is going to be homework. In 5.3, they are saying, without using a calculator, determine each of the following in terms of P. So now, guys, they've given us, I can't remember really if we've done questions like this year. This was almost like a grade 10 question, which now is almost like becoming more complicated. So they've told us that sine 36 is the square root of 1 minus P squared. Which maybe immediately that is a bit off-putting, right? Because it looks quite complicated. But guys, whenever they say without using a calculator, you're going to have to draw a diagram, right? So please, let's write that on the side. If they've said without using a calculator, that means you are going to draw a diagram. And again, that is something that you need to memorize, guys. If you don't remember that, you're going to struggle with this question. All right, and it's 7 marks. Now, what we're going to put in this diagram is we are going to draw our right angle triangle, and you can draw it however you want. I normally draw mine kind of going to that side. Make sure that you do that 90-degree angle. Guys, what angle did they give us? 36. So the 36-degree angle is going to go in your triangle. Now, if that angle is 36, can we calculate the third angle? 180 minus 90 is 90. Minus 36 is going to give us 54. And then minus another 6. All right, that can come in handy later because maybe they'll ask us something with a 54-degree angle and then we can just use the triangle. Now guys, what they've given us here is sine, and we know that sine is the same as opposite over hypotenuse. So just put that over 1 there because now we can use that as our opposite side. And our hypotenuse is going to be 1. And once we've done that, we can use Pythagoras to calculate the third side. That's what you're always going to have to do for these questions, guys. You always need to make sure that whatever they've given you is a fraction. Sometimes it is a fraction. Sometimes they'll give you like t over 2 or something, right? Then t is your opposite side, 2 is your hypotenuse. But if it's just an expression like this, that's not a fraction. You put it over 1. So that you have your opposite and you have your hypotenuse. Okay, so opposite to 36 is going to be the square root of 1 minus p squared. And then the hypotenuse, the angle, or the side, sorry, that's opposite the 90-degree angle is going to be 1. Now we're going to use Pythagoras to find that third side, all right? We can call this third side anything. Let's call it x, because I'm going to show my calculation here on the side now. I'm going to say, remember when we're using Pythag, we do x squared, right? Now guys, is the side that we're trying to find, is this the hypotenuse? No, meaning we have to take the hypotenuse squared minus the other one squared. Okay, it's always hypotenuse squared, so 1 squared, minus the other side squared. So now you just need to be very careful that that other side was that whole square root. In brackets, please, Pythagoras. We do actually take a mark off in finals if that is not there. All right, 1 squared we all know is just 1. Minus, what do you get when you have a square root that you're squaring? Good, they cancel out, right? But now we need to be very careful, guys. When we cancel these two out, we still have in brackets 1 minus p squared. Yes, it's going to become 1 plus. Well, minus 1 plus p squared. You can do that in your head if you want to. I just want to make sure that we know exactly what's happening here. Right, so do we see what we're left with? P squared. But that was x squared, guys. So what is x going to be? P. Now, guys, if this triangle was drawn in the Cartesian plane, right, which we do sometimes do, so if it was like in quadrant 2 or whatever, then our x might have been a negative number. So you just need to be careful for those ones. Here, this is a 36-degree triangle. So if we had to draw this in the Cartesian plane, in which quadrant is 36 degrees? Quadrant 1, right? So this would just be positive p anyway. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. Plus, minus, is it a positive, is it a negative, whatever. You can just go with that straight away. Okay, we haven't actually even looked at what they were asking us to do. They wanted us to determine in terms of p. That means that our answer has to have a p in it, right? Tan 36. Therefore, tan 36 degrees. And guys, now that we have our triangle, how easy is that? Tan is opposite over adjacent. So square root of 1 minus p squared over the adjacent side, which is p. Okay, 3 marks. So you would get a mark for drawing your diagram. I'm trying to remember now. I actually think I marked this question. It was a mark for the diagram, a mark for getting x equals p, and then it was a mark for that answer. Okay, 5.3.2. Now you can see that that one is worth 4 marks, but we already have the diagram, meaning they're not going to give us marks for the diagram again. Okay, so for 5.3.2, the question was asking for cos of 108. Now guys, do we have 108 degrees in our triangle? No, meaning we're going to have to work on this until we get something written either with 36 or what is the other angle in the triangle? 54. Right? Isn't 108 the same as 2 times 54? And if we have 2 times an angle, that is a double angle. So we're going to have to use a cos double angle identity. Now guys, this is where we have 3 to choose from, right? We can do any one of them. What are they again? Is it 1 minus 2 sine squared x? Is it again? Let me quickly see. It's on the formula sheet. Yes. All right, so we can do 1 minus 2 sine squared 54. Or you could do 2 cos squared 54 minus 1. Or you could do cos squared 54 minus sine squared 54. We had all 3 of these options on the memo, right? Because you could choose any one of them. All right, let's quickly go back to the triangle. Can we use the sine one? Is that fine with everyone? It's the first one that we wrote down. So let's quickly see, what is sine 54? Sine 54 is opposite over hypotenuse. That's a nice one. P over 1. So just P. All right? So sine 54 is P. So this is going to be 1 minus 2 sine 54 squared, which is P squared. All right, I'm just going to make a note here that sine 54 was equal to P. Okay, grade 12s.